Hello?
Yeah, welcome to the session 2 of Vedic Unified Theology 101. The title of today's presentation is just a minute, catching hold of the slides. Those who are joining this session, please go to your screen at the top and you will see a small, kind of a small sub window, and mute your camera and speaker so that there is nothing that will disturb the session. Now I am beginning to, I can see my slides. Okay, that is our title today, a historical perspective of Satya, Sanatana, Vedic Dharma. That is an alternative title I have chosen for Vedic Unified Theory, and much of that was explained last time. We are borrowing the blueprint from Vedic literature and presenting it to the modern scientific world, that this is a good option to start with future unified theory of matter and consciousness, which can lead the entire humanity to a lasting peace and happiness. I must, as I intend to give you this historical perspective, I want to bring out a very important event, which is a landmark event in Indian ancient history called Mahabharata War, the Great Indian War, when cousins were fighting for for a piece of land, so to say. You can say that war caused a drastic decline in Indian civil society. Or one view is that the downfall had started, like Maharishi Dayananda, founder of Isamath, says, India's downfall began about 6,000 years ago, and it culminated in this particular war, which took place about 5,100 years ago. It demonstrates a subtle feature in human psyche, that a human being somehow is overpowered by sensual pleasures and gradually shifts into what is called a materialistic life. That is very well brought out in Vedic literature, as if life is a journey and we are always at a fork. One path leads to Shreya Marg and one leads to what is called Preya Marg. Shreya means it is desirable. Preya means this is very priya, it is very tempting. Common people fall to the temptations, and like I will say, modern society, a large fraction of population are following this path, where you are attracted by the pleasures of life, mundane pleasures of life, which come from all kinds of worldly objects, and then you want to acquire more and more of them and enjoy your life. But an intelligent person knows more you follow in this direction, there will be eventually you will fall more in pain and suffering. So this will not be lasting peace and happiness. So that's why a balanced life is suggested like this. But that is the human nature. We are always seeing in the past. So you will see the common theme in today's presentation is that human society kinds of devolves with time unless we are very careful. So to begin with, the human population valued this path more, but as the time passes of, with passage of time, greater and greater proportion of population seem to be adopting the path of Pre-MahaBharata. So that is a feature we will be seeing again and again. But one interesting coincidence is there that this war, which is about 5,100 years ago, this timeline coincides with the birth of religions in the world. So the oldest religions are Zoroastrianism and Judaism. They took birth about 4,500 years ago. So as if this is the event, Mahabharata war, about 5,000 years ago, when I will say human dharma, which was one universal set of principles guiding the entire humanity that we have discussed last time, as if that went to a steep decline, and to fill up that vacuum, all kinds of religions started to take birth. So that is the feature I want to point out. Let's look at, continue with. So I want to, with this Mahabharata war as a landmark defining moment, I want to say the pre-Mahabharata period, which must have been for hundreds of millions of years, it can be divided into three ages, namely Vedic age, Upanishadic age, Sad-Darsana age. Sanskrit term, Shad is for six, Darshan is for philosophy. So this is a group, name of a group, which consists of six books of the Vedic philosophy. So why these three ages? That's what I want to discuss now. So in the Vedic age, the population by and large had fantastic memory and other capacity, even physically, morally, spiritually, they were at a very superior level, and they were able to manage their affairs with the Vedic verses. So the language of the Vedas was kind of their mother tongue. They knew it very well, and they understood the message of the Vedas, and they lived their life accordingly. So that is the Vedic age, when the Vedas together have about 20,000 verses, and they were managing their affairs, communicating in that language, and leading a very balanced life. But over the period of these many millions of years, the human psyche began to devolve, and then we slip into the second age. What I am saying here, age, first age led to the second age due to decline in human memory. So now a significant fraction of population could not comprehend or memorize all those 20,000 plus verses. So there was a demand for a gist of the Vedas. And that's what is the second class of books. There are 11 principal Upanishads, which are basically extracts from the Vedas so as to form a small amount of literature, small in size, but that still contains the essence of the message that was coming from the Vedas. So the message is same. The people in both the ages followed the Vedic way of life, but this message was condensed in the form of Upanishad. Qualitatively, there is no change between age 1 and 2, but quantitatively, the voluminous literature was condensed into smaller size of the literature. That is what is Upanishads are. Then the second age, with the passage of time, the second age began to lead materialistic life. So the rishis who were maintaining the traditions of Vedic and Upanishadic age, they felt that they should produce new kind of literature to convince the population that Vedic way of life is superior to materialistic way of life. So that is what led to the third age of the textbooks of the Vedic philosophy. So for the first time, the books became, what I am saying is, third age, the books were argumentative. Previously, there were no arguments. The message was just given in a pedagogic manner and people followed it. Of course, the philosophy was embedded in that message. But now the people began to live in according to materialistic life. The rishis felt the need to argue that no, materialistic life will eventually increase your pain and suffering, and if you want lasting peace and happiness, you should follow the Vedic way of life. So that became argumentative. This is how the third age is different from the previous two ages. We will look at the third age itself. Let's look at it now in slightly more detail. The Sad-Darsana Yug, so to say, 6 books of Vedic philosophy. And within this, I will try to point out that kind of devolution is visible. Now, as we try to put this devolution under a scanner, evolution is in multiple folds. So now we are seeing generally a human society, its human psyche can devolve from jnana to karma, knowledge to action. As you are probably familiar with this aspect, that those who are more have a excuse me, those who have a better intellectual, moral and stature and spiritual stature, they give more importance to knowledge. And those who are on the lower spectrum, they give importance to action. Because actions are more visible. Your knowledge is not more visible to others. But when you do certain things, your actions, your karma are more visible to others. And then there are people down the line who try to cash on popularity. They do something and then they want, through the media, they want to be well known, they want others to know what good things they have done. So, so there is a wide spectrum. It goes from knowledge to action. So within the action, you can just do good things, but not publicize it much. It is nishkam karma. But then there are people who will do karma and they expect certain rewards. They want their positions to grow, and many things are there which all of us are quite familiar with. And for that, they will go through media. They want their good actions to be known by others through newspapers and television and whatnot. So all these things are very visible in modern society. So I don't have to go into detail. So this is enough to say that this is another feature of devolution of human psyche from jnana, knowledge, to action to karma. And within this jnana and karma, again there are wide spectrums. As I have pointed out, in case of karma, you can do nishkam karma, you can do it silently, or you can do very visibly, and then you expect a lot of rewards, recognition, and whatnot. So, within these two domains, there can be a wide spectrum. Now, within the knowledge jnana also, there is a wide spectrum. Like at this point, I am speaking, you are hearing, and you pick up some piece of knowledge. Or you read a book, you get some ideas. So that is also knowledge. but that is word based knowledge. You have not quite experienced that. So, true knowledge is gained experientially when truly we say seeing is believing. So, knowledge has also a wide spectrum. It can be very superficial, it can be very in depth, and so on and so forth. See these things when I list these 6 books, that's the devolution that was happening in the Indian society. But these time scales are fairly long by our orthodox view. The first book on Sankhya by Kapil is about 1.2 million years ago. And the last books, number 5 and 6, they are about pre-Mahabharata, before Mahabharata, some more than 7,000 years ago. So this also, the third age we are talking about, Sad-Darsana, is a very wide range of the order of about a million years. So the Sankhya, let's see what is its agenda. Getting away from pain in a total sense, and what is the mechanism? Gaining experiential knowledge of my personal consciousness and my mind. That is characterized as Vivek Khyat. So that is what I should get to know, that I am, my consciousness is different from my mind. And that discriminatory ability, not by word, but through deep meditation practice, when I calm down my mind, then there are no more fluctuations in mind, and then I get to know my own self, that is self realization. So, that kind of knowledge, if you have gained, then you are called, you have attained Vivek Khyati. So, Vivek is a wisdom of a high order, and yes, that has shown it light within me. So, that is what is Vivek Khyati. So, that's what was the objective in Sankhya, authored by Kapil. Then comes Patanjali on the scene. He writes a book on yoga, and of course, you know it. I think last time I also pointed out, even the term yoga has lost its meaning today. Most of the people do what is called hot yoga, and they think that is what is yoga. So we will have an opportunity to talk more slightly later in the course. But here, Kapil had already talked both theoretical and experimental aspects of this particular science, how to discriminate between your consciousness and your mind. But that experimental part was in a, I will say from today's standard, in a very obscure manner, not that easy to understand for a common person. So that gives an idea. In his time, people were quite superior level. So whatever instruction he gave, people were able to understand and follow it. But down the timeline, when it is Patanjali, he noticed that the experimental methods of Kapil's were not adequate enough to guide the population. So he gave a greater exposition of that. And while doing so, he made it happen that it was relevant for all categories of people. So by now in the society, it's not that all people are of superior kind like they were in Kapil's time. So he framed his experimental method in 3 hierarchies, which I'll talk later in the course, called as Yoga, Kriya Yoga, and Ashtanga Yoga. So his yoga is again for the superior people, but Kriya Yoga is for some intermediate category, and Ashtanga Yoga is for anybody in the world. Even today's human society can benefit from Ashtanga. So there must have been further devolution. So Patanjali needed to create wider versions of experimental methods of Kapil and gave his name as Yoga Darshan. Of course, all these are argumentative, but down the timeline, when this person Gautam is there, he needed to write a book called Nyaya, yeah, which is nothing but philosophy of logic. And in his time, even arguments were being used in a fallacious manner. So we know it. If you are just arguing for sake of argument, you can put up things upside down. So that is called fallacious logic. And he warned us that logic should be used in a proper manner for positive gain and to ascertain the real truths and not the shadow of it. So, he classified the debates on and how the actual debate should take place using what kind of logical framework. And then he pointed out that there are some wrong methods also called as Hetvabhas, Jalpa, Vitanda, etc., which are wrong methods adopted just for sake of gaining a victory in a debate. But that is not the right thing. So he pointed out all this in his book called Nyaya Darshan, and he made illustrations also. Illustrations are basically nothing but Vedic philosophy. Now the next person is Karnad. He writes a book called Vaisheshik, where he used a term dharma the way I had used it in session one. So his book begins with Athato Dharma Jigyasa. So this is an inquiry about dharma and what will happen. He says, Yato Abhyuda Nishaya Siddhi Sadharma. If we know dharma of everything, then including my consciousness, including the beautiful world around us, our body, and all those things, you know. So everything visible world is made of matter, material transformation, and our mind, our consciousness, and so on and so forth. If we know everything exactly their characteristics as it is, then of course we can chalk out our life and its objectives properly. So that will give rise to abuse, and namely material, wealth and progress, and nishayas. Nishayas is same as the share mark I used 2 slides ago. So nishayas is the innermost pleasures of life. So he said, as a human being, we are not contented with mere sensual pleasures of life. We demand something deep within us, and that is nishayas. So both can be acquired if we lead a balanced life. So that was his scope, and his book is called Vaisheshik because his starting point is what is called Vishesh. Vishesh is those 5 elements, Agni, Vayu, Jal, Akash, and uh, Prithvi, out of which all these material things are created. So that's why his book is called Vaisheshik. So the subatomic particles prior to these called Panchabhut, they are called Avishesh. That were taken care of by Sankhya, by Kapil in Sankhya, and hence Kanad in his fourth book on Vaisheshik, his starting point is Vishesh. That's why his book is called Vaisheshik. Now, so the knowledge is more about the visible world, but still he does not forget the sight of the other things in the world which are invisible, namely mind and consciousness. So that's what can lead to abhyuda and shares. So still the knowledge is here, the common thread. The number one is more on experiential knowledge, which has continued in yoga, but now the logic and debates are going haywire. So this correction is made by Gautam in Nyaya Darshan, and people are becoming more interested in knowing about outer world. Like today, everybody, the whole library is filled with the material science. So everybody is interested in things around us. Nobody is much interested in things within us. So there is more literature about things around us. So his book slightly of that type. So, this is all going Jnana and Jnana to come. the way I was mentioning. But in the book number 5, it is heavily on karma, and by this time, people were doing all kind of fancy yajnas and taking credits for that. All they are basically good as empirical models to teach their, like in our universities, we have a model in laboratories teach the experiment, the teach the scientific principles. So you cannot, like for solar system, you can make a nice model, so students can learn how day and night happen, how different seasons are happening, and how so many things are happening, including solar eclipse, lunar eclipse, and all that. So that will be a model. So that sort of models were adopted by our rishis in the books called Brahman and Aranyak, etc. And they were realized in that used to be very specialized yajnas. But then they became like as if I perform the yajna, I get a reward. They became like sakam karma rather than nishkam karma. So they were educational tools. Like we also have Agnihotra, etc. These are educational tools, and there is a slight advantage of environmental pollution, purification, etc. But then, like many people today will do, a simple Agnihotra Havan, but think as if to bring them some other kind of rewards. So that is the kind of evolution in human psyche from Jnana to Karma. So that was to be arrested, and that's what is the contribution of Jaimini. He said that yes, we must perform karma, but karma should be in accordance with the message of the Vedas. So his book is also Athato Dharma Vyakyasyama. Now I will speak about Dharma, and for him, Dharma was any action which is in accordance with the message of the Vedas. But then the question arises why to give importance? Because by this time, the people were not so much losing interest in the Vedas. So he emphasized it that we must follow the message of the Vedas because these are eternal words. The word is eternal, Shabda Nityatva, what is called, and it is so because it is coming from the infinite consciousness of Ishwar. So Ishwar is eternal, and so is his word is eternal, and that is just like the sun is important for all of us. Similarly, his word is important for all the human beings, and we should give importance to it. So people were beginning to get away from the Vedic way of life, and that's why Vedanta came into picture. Towards the end, here, this is the Brahma Sutra or Vedanta by Badayan. Badayan is the teacher of Jaimini. So number 5 and number 6 are at the same time, but we usually order it in this manner. So Badayan's book is called Vedanta, also Brahma Sutra. It begins with Atato Brahma Jigyasa, as if now the inquiry is about Brahman. So, of course, as I said, in this time, people began to think atheistically, and there was a necessity to convince them that Brahman truly exists. So, as I can see, even this third age of Sad-Darsana, 6 books of Vedic philosophy, spanning about more than 1,000,000 years, also shows the same devolution of human psyche. That's what is the common feature in any Indian history, in anybody, anywhere, the whole human history or in the India. Along with the 3 sets of books I have mentioned, one interesting development was happening concurrently, and that was a set of books called Vedanga. Vedanga is, literally speaking, is limbs of the Vedas, and this is very relevant more you are farther away from the Vedic age, which we are. If we want to go back to the Vedic age, we have to go through, this is the bridge, so to say. So this has six faculty. Sanskrit terms are Shiksha, Vyakarna, Chandas, Niyukti, Jyotish, and Kalp. But I order it in this way. Shiksha has phonetics, Vyakarna has grammar, and I list Niyukt first. Niyukt is by called etymology. Chand is my number 4 meter. Number 5, Jyotish is astronomy. Number 6 is that Yajna I was talking about. So they are empirical models, etc. I have no problem with these English translation, except probably for Jyotish, I would say astronomy and not astrology. Otherwise, all these are fine. And Kalp, he has translated, this I borrowed a picture from internet. He translated a Vedic action, it's fine, but I prefer to translate as empirical models. So this is produced by the ancient rishis for those far away from the Vedas, so that they can also get to know the message of the Veda. Here I just want to give a kind of a metaphor that this is needed more you get away from it. I will talk in terms of, say, my personal experience. Say, today I am in America and my mother tongue is Hindi. So you can visualize a person who has mother tongue Hindi, who never went to a school or college or university, but he's fluent in his language. That's why it is called mother tongue. He just naturally picks up from his mother, and in society, he is not a literate person, and he is still good in his language. Maybe he can create poetry also. Maybe he can give a good lecture if he doesn't know how to read and write, but still he can construct poetry, he can deliver a lecture, talk, and so on and so forth. It's not that it is not plausible. But let us see this man, suppose somehow moves into America, and at a later age he has a grandchild, and grandchild is in America, is picking up for all practical purpose. English is his mother tongue, so to say, and he's picking up that language. Now the grandfather has a desire to pass on Hindi language, some sort of proficiency in Hindi to his grandchild. Now the grandfather, the mother tongue was Hindi. He never needed the formal books in Hindi, grammar, all that to gain that fluency. But for his grandchild, if he wants to bring him on the direction of Hindi like fluency, he has to give him some means, and those means will be in this nature. So, without going more into this story, what I'm trying to say is you need this alphabet phonetics of the sounds that are coming in the Vedas. Agnimire, Purohitam, Yajnasya Devam. This is very first verse in the Rig Veda. So, what are these sounds? So that has to be scientifically put together. That's what Panini did in Shiksha, Aku Visarjya Kantha, etc. So you have to pass on the phonetic sounds of that particular language. You have to pass on the grammar of that language. Certain words of that language become obscure with time. So you have to make a glossary or dictionary of that language. That is called Niyukta. And the Vedas are like Gayatri Mantra is in a particular meter, 24 syllables, etc. So that knowledge is slightly acquired. If you want to sit for meditation, upasana, in Sandhikal, when sunrise, you have to know what time will be tomorrow sunrise, or you have to have some knowledge of astronomy, etc. And then you want to, all these complex concepts, not so easy to understand, like solar system. And it's very difficult to communicate to a child that Earth is not a flat but is a round ball, and is cycling around the sun, etc. So you need certain models to explain all that. So as you can see, all these things are required for somebody who has gone far away from the Vedas to fall in line with the Vedas again. So I just cooked up a metaphor of mother tongue versus a foreign language, like this imaginary grandfather has to borrow books or create books or has to buy books from market so that he can pass on some level of proficiency in Hindi language to his grandchild. Those books he did not himself need it. He did not quite need it, and he was comfortable with his fluency. But now that his grandchild is in a different environment, so that's why these fourth series of books, that was the foresight of our rishis. Right from the Vedic age, they could visualize that later in the time period, the human population will not be so fluent that they can just hear the Vedic verse and get to its meaning. So they will need certain means, certain tools, and they begin to create those tools, and that's what is this Vedanta. So this has been going on right from the Vedic age. This is a huge volume of literature, very, very huge literature. And while the three kinds of literature I have mentioned, they are more in skeleton. Let's move on to post-Mahabharata period. By now I have covered pre-Mahabharata period of hundreds of millions of years. Now we are what might have happened in the last 5,000 years. I am not concerned about all kinds of aspects. I am focused on Satya, Sanatana, Vedic, Dharma, because that has the promise to become Vedic unified theory of matter and consciousness. So I am asking, like I asked in session one, if it was a wonderful theory, then why it lost its shine? Why it became obscure? Why it is not so well known? Why it went through a downfall? Why it got polluted and so on. So, the layperson will always expect a particular kind of thought process, which is good to guide us, and that has intrinsic strength to preserve itself. If it cannot preserve itself, then there are question marks. But we know it in our back of mind. Any constitution, we have to work hard to preserve that constitution. Just by itself, no constitution can stay alive for hundreds of years, centuries, and millennia. We have to work hard. And that's what was missing in the last 6,000 years or so in Indian history. People became complacent, and that led to the down. So, in post-Mahabharata period, as I remarked earlier, this is no more age of dharma, it is age of religions. There are multiple religions. Every day a new religion is coming into existence. And all this happened because Satya Sanatan Vedic lost its shine. So much so, today a common Hindu is also follower of another religion. Like present in the present canvas of the situation, Hinduism is also like any other religion. Though it may have some connectivity to the kernel of Satya Sanatan Vedic Dharma. But otherwise, there are so many add-on things that don't quite correlate with Satya Sanatana Vedic Dharma. So this is nothing but the same evolution that has been a common feature throughout. But here I want to see from positive angle, and that's what has benefited me. And that's what I want to pass on to you and others. What is it? That two, two giants came into Indian scene. Those dharma, let me read the slide. Dharma, as we see it, actually it is supplement of science And what are we supplementing it with? The non-physical concept of consciousness. One is at a micro level, tiny consciousness. And one is at a macro level, finite consciousness. So Dharma is nothing but modern science added with this concept. So that Dharma, which was a scientific spirituality or whatever you call it, was declining. That decline was by an exponential sense, and religions were taking birth. That's what has happened in post-MahaBharata. But we have been saved slightly, and the credit must go to the two individuals who did their best to arrest this decline. One is Shankaracharya, Adi Shankar. He is born around this. I don't know exactly when he passed away, but at a very young age. And his monumental contribution is that he brought again in India's mainstream some sort of, not exactly the Vedas, but a Vedic thought process, I will say. He produced books on Upanishads and also on Vedanta Darshan particularly, but he was not able to. If he lived longer, probably he would have done it. He did not produce books on Vedas. That was left for Dayananda to do, and that is the contribution of Dayananda, founder of Arya Samaj, who lived 1825 to 1883, kind of a recent modern history. And his contribution was that he gave us how, through the Vedanta, in a systematic manner, what should be our curriculum of education. Anybody who is genuinely interested in learning the principles of the Vedas can open the book of the Vedas and get to its meaning. So he used the beauty of the Vedanga, all these classical methods, and he was able to tell us how to get to know the message of the Vedas. So the back to the Vedas in letter and spirit. And that's why probably I am able to talk about all this, though I have engineering background, but still following his footsteps, I have been able to pick up some gems of the Vedas. That's the contribution. So we live in a very materialistic world, but still there is a way out of the tunnel. And if we follow this curriculum, etc., we can even now are able to understand the message. Somebody may ask, what is the relevance of the Vedas in modern times? Because today it's very fancy to use latest gadgets. You want to use a new computer, new phone set. Nobody wants to use something which was old because technology is advancing such a rapid pace. We want to use a new and new. Why so much importance to the oldest book in the human library, namely the Vedas? So we have to understand it. What is so peculiar about the Vedas? The very first thing that strikes us is name. The way the term itself is very unusual. It is, and since we are in the age of religions, we have to understand Vedas in a objective manner. Otherwise, it's easy to treat Vedas as another religion, but that is not the truth. So that's why it requires a good understanding. The word Ved is derived from the root Vid. Vid is called a Janathe Sattat in relation to knowledge and exist. Basically, whatever exists, we have to know that existence and knowledge goes hand in hand. Something exists, it is in our scope of inquiry. We want to know about it. And that's what knowledge is all about. And that kind of meaning is easy to see in an example word we are familiar with, Ayurveda. Compound word made out of Ayu, Ved, Ved means knowledge, the science. Ayu is our lifespan. So Ayurveda is medical science, basically, life science. And it helps us get away from disease of diseases and all and elongate our life. So that is the proof that the word Ved is knowledge. It is not somebody's private property, somebody's so-called holy book or somebody's book of religion or something. This is pure knowledge of God. We need knowledge to begin with, and there has to be some sort of initial bank of knowledge to start life with. Like popularly we say, you have a new television set, you need an instruction manual to start using it. So if we are suddenly we find ourselves on the earth, the very first human, we need some kind of instruction manual, something to start making sense out of life. What is this world? How to live here and so on and so forth. Animals probably don't need it because they have worked with their instinct, and these are some of the things I am pointing out in the next few slides. So let's consider a dipole of eyes and sun. So there we have two beautiful eyes, but even if eyes were there, but there was no sun, it would have been dark. Isn't it? And if there was sun, but we didn't have eyes, or we were blind, there will be darkness. So this is a kind of a pair. They are interdependent. Both need each other. That's a dipole of interest. One without another has no meaning. This dipole is interesting for human beings. Beautiful women you can see with two eyes, but also for animals, birds, and many other species. They also are part of this dipole. And that's enough for their life. At the end of the sunset, they go to they live in darkness, animals. They manage their life. They wait for the next morning. They, they go to sleep all these hours, but it's all fine for them. But human beings are different from animals. So even when it gets dark, we want to improve our quality of life. We have discovered something like fire, then electricity and lamps and whatnot. That's what is, that's how human beings are different from all other species. And this will be one topic in this course, how we are different from other species. But tentatively, I am saying we, all other species function with instinct. They are very happy with the natural knowledge that they got at the time of birth, but we are not happy with just that instinctive knowledge. And to gather more knowledge, true knowledge, we have a powerful faculty of intellectual faculty in our mind, and that functions. What is intellect? Buddhi is sat asat vivekvati buddhi. Buddhi, the intellect, is to distinguish between right and wrong, good and bad, do's and don'ts, pap and punya, virtues and vices, etc. That is what we are always confronted with every moment. Animal is always right. If we are always confronted with these dualities, right and wrong, only with the knowledge we can decide, discriminate between what is right and what is wrong. So we need a set of knowledge. Knowledge acts as the fuel for the engine that is the intellectual faculty. So how did the first human being? Today we have a lot of knowledge, but we go back one generation. Question arises: what did the first human generation had? How did they manage their affairs? That is where we say, just like the first dipole of eyes and sun, intellect is like our inner eyes. They need some inner light of knowledge. That's how they could function. That is the function. That is the means provided by the Vedas. Vedas are a collection of certain words which embody certain knowledge which was understood by the first human being, and that was guiding him as far as his intellectual faculty was concerned. So for animals and birds, this dipole is enough, but not enough for human beings. They need another dipole. That is what the relevance of the Vedas, just like we have all kinds of artificial sources of lights, but the sun is continuing to be relevant for us today. If sun is no more there, everybody knows there will be no light. Similarly, Vedas continue to remain relevant, we must stay connected. Let's quickly go slightly on the fast track. So here, somebody can question. So because I am in America, very conscious of a possibility, one American may say, if Vedas are so important, like the sun is, sun shines over India as well as America, everywhere. So an American should also have been aware of Vedas, and that continuity should have been preserved. But why has it not been? If it was not that, if it has not been preserved, probably it is not that important. And indeed, we Americans have managed our life without the Vedas. So we cannot manage our life without the sun. So how can you put Vedas and sun at this same high pedestal? Is it not? That is a very important question. So we say that Ved is any true knowledge that is coming to human beings from the source of knowledge. The source of knowledge is that infinite consciousness, the Ishwar, because he has created the universe based on that knowledge. Everything in the universe functions according to the characteristics of those things. And that have been determined by the Ishwar. So he is the, Patanjali calls him as Vajyatva Bijam. So he is omniscient, and indeed in his case, first is his knowledge, then he creates, he makes all these things. Generally, we get the knowledge after the things are existing. But in his case, the order is opposite. So he is the original source of all the truth. And let us try to understand how does he transmit knowledge to human beings. I have classified into four categories. Very first is natural instinct, which of course animals are more rich in that compared to human beings, but we also have some natural instinct. Most important is survival instinct, where even a small child, if suppose there is a fire in the other side, even a small child will try to move opposite to that fire. Or if there is a bomb explosion, even a small child will try to move in the opposite direction. He knows that that resembles, that represents death, and I don't want to die. I want to be away from it. So naturally, instinctively, we get away from anything that is painful. Death is the most painful event for a common human being. So we have survival instinct in general to get away from pain and also from death. We also gather a lot of knowledge via the events around us. We have all sensory organs. We see that everything falls on the earth, and then we conjecture about gravitational force of the earth. We see how a bird is making nest, how a honeybee makes its honeycomb, and then we construct many things like in an engine we have afterburner, so many things in the structure of honeycomb. So we have picked up a lot of things happening which we have seen from the surrounding, from the natural events or from what animals do, and we have tried to gather that. Then there is a third mechanism is the Vedas, which I have put in the third category in this list. There is no particular order here, but I'm just taking them one by one. Because once we are equipped with number one and two, that is quite enough actually. We lead a good life, but just to ensure that Ishwar has another mechanism. It's a formal mechanism which he gave to the generation, first generation. And this generation was so much concerned that those words will be passed on to the future generation. Even today in India, after so many millions of years, there are families who are fully dedicated to memorizing the verses in the Vedas. And the father thinks the child should do the same, and that child becomes a father, he passes. This tradition is still there, and they have created 11 or 13 kinds of recitation just to ensure that there is not a single alphabetic change here and there, because they think this is their sacred duty to pass on 20,000 plus verses to the next generation. So that is so important a tradition which is still continuing. Formal. I'll come back to it slightly later as I give a metaphor here. Now the people, that's why I put it at number 3 and not number 4. Now that we have this message, this idea, we are expected to lead life accordingly. If I lead life accordingly, then I become a deserving candidate. Deserving candidate to gain direct knowledge from Vishnu. Now this is also in two forms, conscience and in meditation, called Sampajñat Samadhi. Conscience is, this is what Maharishi Dayananda writes in Satya's Prakash, जब आप कोई गलत काम करने को उद्यत होते हैं तो शंका भय और लज्जा. He provides this as a proof for existence of Ishvara, which I may talk at a later stage. But at this point, I want to say, a human being, I know my dharma, I know right and wrong, I know how I should conduct. Even then, if I do something wrong way, then there is an inner voice, that's what I call conscience, that stops me, that warns me. And it is threefold warning: doubt, fear, and shame. First warning is there is a doubt within me. Am I doing right? Then there is an element of fear. If I overcome the first warning and still do the wrong, then I am very concerned. Should it not happen that somebody, it shouldn't happen that somebody should seize me, because there is a fear. I don't want to be seen by anyone. And then there is an element of shame, that if somebody catches me, if I get to be caught, then it will be a very embarrassing situation. So these people warnings are coming one after another. I must overcome them. Then only I can execute that adharma, the wrongful task. So that is what, if I am on the wrong, the reason I have put it at number 4 is, somebody, say a hardcore criminal may say, I don't get any inner voice. Okay, today you don't get it because you are leading a life which is on a not a noble life. If you continued on a good path, you would be not denying that triple warning system. So, and even the criminal at a young age, when he was about adopting that wrongful act for the first time, the conscience must have been there. And if you are a good person, you follow this conscience, you improve, then you learn meditation out of such courses, and then there is a flash of knowledge. Like Newton is relaxing, his mind is blank, suddenly he gets a flash that there is a gravitational pull from the center of the earth. That is kind of samadhi, Vajjat samadhi. So selected people are able to receive a flash of knowledge direct from that. I think I have 1 hour is over now. Still I have 5 slides. Very quickly, just the formal word of the Vedas. The Vedas are word of God revealed at the onset of human civilization on the earth. Typically, in a formal sense, we say there are 4 Vedas, but let's look at it. It's interesting. They are one in the sense, there is just one message. It's not that this contradicts another and so on. They are two in the sense they talk about both matter and consciousness. That's why we are relying on Vedic unified theory of matter and consciousness. And we have discussed a lot that the oh my god, I have to put the power on. Just a minute. I forgot to switch on. Just 1 minute. I have to plug in. Yeah, it's fine. So when I was talking evolution and devolution, the knowledge related to consciousness evolves with time. However, knowledge related to matter can evolve with time. So why there are three? They are in three literary styles: poetry in Rigveda, prose in Yajurveda, and lyrics in Samveda. And there are four volumes, yes, because they mainly cover four knowledge, four subject matters, so to say. Rigveda is on spiritual knowledge, Yajurveda is talking about karma, Samveda is on upasana, and Atharvaveda is other worldly knowledge, how to deal with the world. That's cool. This is the human nature and the Vedas. The moral and spiritual stature degrades with time. That's what we have seen. That is the human tendency, human nature. However, if we are careful, we are just, if we are not lazy enough, material knowledge can evolve with time. But with effort, this can also be arrested, and there can be marginal increase. It's not that we can go back to the Vedic age, but we can improve the present situation. Hence, the Vedas contains science of consciousness at its climax, which otherwise devolves with time, which is called as Vidya as well as Paravidya. Science of matter is in bare seed form. That is for us to do it. So that is the task for us. And this is referred to as avidya as well as apaya-vidya. That is Sanatana Vedic Dharma, which I call as Vedic unified theory of matter consciousness also, scientific spirituality also. But I'm making a briefest statement of it that infinite consciousness makes the universe out of matter or the tiny consciousness. And more important, that's how we are different from the religions. Our tiny consciousness can connect to this without an intermediary. In any religion, the founder of religion is given more undue importance, and so many other things go wrong because these two statements must be true, and this is what truly spirituality is. And I want to say here that the religions claim to be spirituality, talking about spirituality, but that is defective spirituality or pseudo spirituality, because on this parameter, even here they are not quite logical and rational, and this is, of course, they are missing. There is a lot of importance. The founder of the religion that to the infinite consciousness. Summarizing it, science of matter, which is a physical substance, and that of consciousness, which is non-physical, and I will use a new kind of terminology. I will call it a science of sciences also when I talk about Sankhya and Yoga in a later session. Or Vedic unified theory or Satya Sanatana Vedic or science. So I'm adding one more terminology here. Science of science. Knowledge and application, they must go hand in hand, and within the knowledge, there must be both the wings of it, theory and experiment. Knowledge of matter and its application may evolve with time when it comes to matter. Knowledge of consciousness, that evolves with time, so we have to be careful. And even here, If we have just gained some knowledge in words, it is not that much important versus getting it to see it. So experiential knowledge, just like about matter, experiments are important just to ascertain the theory, so is true in the direction of consciousness also. We cannot have just knowledge in words only and claim as if we know everything. Vedas will remain important as sun. Very quickly, sorry about that, exceeding time, but in 1 minute I want to just close it. A particular Ved mantra I have borrowed from Rig Veda 8.18.6. Aditi no diva pashumaditi naktamadvaya aditi patvam hasa tada veda. Aditi is knowledge that is firmly known. Aditi is duality. If you have a doubt, then you are always worried about is it A or B. If you know, if your knowledge is exact, correct, accurate, then you know it is A. And that is firm knowledge. O is for negation. Aditi is for many names, many Aditi has wider connotation. But here Aditi is that knowledge which is firmly grounded and is known to you. This is about the things which are visible in the daytime. You know, the daytime here means the visible things which even animals can see. So they also see the objects and we also see. So these objects, if we know more and more, that is material science. Then they are Aditi, kayak knowledge about Naktam is night, when things are existing but are not visible. Like my consciousness exists, but it is not visible. So there has to be kayak knowledge about other things that are invisible. So as a human being, I need to pick up both kinds of knowledge about visible things as well as about invisible things. And what is the purpose of that? Aditi Patum Hasa Sada Veda. That kind of accurate knowledge, particularly about invisible things, about my consciousness, will save me Patu. Patu means save, protection from all kinds of vices in the world. Then I will lead my life. I will use body and mind in a correct manner. And in what direction? Sada Vedha. I want to build up the material science. Material science should evolve with time, but while preserving all the spiritual knowledge that I have gained in life. Thank you very much for your attention.